Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Let the children of Israel keep the Passover at its appointed time.
And would you also read verse 9?
Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If any one of you or your posterity is unclean because of a corpse or is far away on a journey, he may still keep the Lord's Passover.
One more verse.
On the 14th day of the second month at twilight, they may keep it.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. We're going to take a look. Have you ever noticed that you learn a lot more when things go wrong than when they go right?
Yeah.
Ever gotten the picture that you're much more perceptive and you grab it and you understand a lot more when things are going wrong than when they're going right? And so what we're going to see tonight is the Lord taught Israel in the desert. The Lord taught Israel important lessons in the wilderness. Numbers University is God's college of hard knocks. Numbers University is God's college of hard knocks in the desert. Notice what we just saw. Sounds like what we've been studying for the past 20 years. The Passover. God tells the children of Israel, it's been a year, you've been moving around, now it is time for you to celebrate the Passover. Can you imagine what would happen in our culture if for the past 2,000 years people had been taught by God, by the church, by those who understand the Bible, if they had been taught the concept of the Passover? Imagine, because now people say, well, I know about the Passover, it's that Jewish thing. Christians don't do anything. It's that Jewish thing. And the Jewish people say, well, it's our thing, but we don't do it because the rabbis told us not to do it. Nobody understands what the Passover is about. Can you imagine what it would be like if for 2,000 years people had been taught it is the Lord's Passover instead of Santa Claus? Can you imagine what would have happened if they had been taught it is the Lord's Passover instead of Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer? Can you imagine what would have happened when the ring of fire starts to shift? When things start falling out of the heavens, when comets and asteroids and meteor showers become so common that they're seen all the way around the world. Can you imagine what would have happened if people had learned it is the Lord's Passover instead of Frosty the Snowman? If they had learned with the shifting of the axis of the earth that it is the Lord's Passover instead of the Easter Bunny. Can you imagine what they would know, what they would see, what they would understand as things started to happen in our culture, instead of everybody saying what's happening, if they had been taught it is the Lord's Passover? When things start to happen in the heavens, when things start to happen in the earth, when things start to happen in the seas, when things start to happen to the earth, if they had learned to say it is the Lord's Passover, instead of here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Imagine if for 2,000 years they had been taught the dynamics and the power of the Passover that was taking place. You see, I think that's what God kind of had in mind. I think that's what God was trying to teach the children of Israel. And he proves it because he said, everybody needs to know that you're covered under the blood. You need to know that I am covered under the flood of God's blood, and that has cleansed me. It has enabled me. It will empower me to get through whatever I have to get through. If only I knew the power of that blood that he shed on that Passover. If only I knew the power of what he was doing for me. And yet we have done everything that can be done under our culture to hide the Lord's Passover under every other myth that we can possibly create. But God understood how important it was, because he said back then, verse 2, it's time for the Lord's Passover. Then in verse 9, he turns along and he says, now if you didn't make it for the Passover, if you had a brother-in-law who died, if you had somebody you love who died and you were with their blood, if you had somebody that made you unclean, that you couldn't do it, I want you still to celebrate the Passover in the second Passover. How many of you knew there was a second Passover? There are 3 or 4 hands, 5 hands go up. A bunch of hands don't go up, because I never heard of a second Passover. God thought it was that important that he thought everybody should understand the Passover and they should do it. And so he said, if something happened to you that you can't do the Passover the first time, you dance around the maypole. No, that's not what he said. No, he said, I'm going to give you a second Passover so you can go through the events of slaughtering the lamb, of being covered with the blood, of eating the lamb, of eating the bread, of doing all the things that need to be done. God understood how important it was, and we're reaching a point. We're reaching a point where we need to know this, and now nobody knows it. We're reaching the point where we need to know it, and nobody knows it. You see, and you and I are blessed to be in Numbers University, where God's college of hard knocks. And we're being knocked hard to get the message that's there. Okay. God taught them, first and foremost, when something changes for everything around you, it is the Lord's Passover. That's what he taught them. Took 2,000 years to get the message through, but it's becoming a reality in our day and age. Turn with me to chapter 10, verse 1. Chapter 10, verse 1. Because in chapter 10, verse 1, he says, I want you to make 2 silver trumpets. 2 silver trumpets. And I'm going to use this trumpet in order to call the nation of Israel to understand what they need to understand. See, we're in a time when people are missing the call of God. God is calling, God is calling, God is calling, and everybody's doing everything they can to avoid it. God said, I want 2 silver trumpets, and when I blast 2 of them, I want the entire assembly to come together. And if they play a certain song, I want you to praise. I want you to sing. I want you to worship. I want you to come together to worship, because when you're worshiping, God can go to war for you. So often we're busy trying to fight things through. God, I need that I need that promotion. I need to get moved up. I need a better position. I need more money. And we're fighting for it, and we're gossiping for it, and we're talking to all the people about it, and when we're trying to put pressure, without putting pressure, we're trying to do everything we can to put ourselves in the front. And God says, no, I want you to be at peace. I want you to worship me and let me talk to your boss.
Yes.
I want you to worship me and let me shift the circumstances around you. And so in Israel, to train them at Numbers University, living there in the desert, he said, I'm going to give you 2 silver trumpets. And when you hear the blast of 2 trumpets playing a certain song, come and worship. Assemble. When you hear playing another song, I want you to come forward because we're going to war. And I'll tell you, one of the problems in our culture, people don't know the difference between worship and war. They have no idea where God is and what God is doing and what God is doing for us. If we will worship Him, and it's hard to worship God when you got a lot of other stuff on your mind. I'm starting a new business. That's pressure. I'm into this relationship dating, and that's tough. My son, my daughter is heading the way they're heading, and they won't listen, and that's tough. We're under all these pressures, and God says, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, come and worship. Come and worship. And when there's only one trumpet blast, I want the princes, the leaders to come. Well, I mean, do you understand what's the chaos with America? You got everybody trying to be a leader, everybody elbowing to the front, everybody, they've got the 2 trumpets mixed up with the 1 trumpet. And everybody thinks they're the boss. And they're all busy trying to be the boss without the Lord's guidebook of how the system works. They're all trying to be the boss of how to do it following Satan's call instead of following the guidebook of God on how things work. And you see these trumpets, they really, really are important. In Hebrews, 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. 12. And the Lord Himself shall come with the shout of the archangel, with the trumpet of God. He's referring to the trumpets that we're studying in Numbers. That when God is ready to come back, there is going to come a sound that's going to shake this earth so that the whole thing is going to vibrate. Now this, you may or may not believe this. Do you know that when they took the landing module and went around the moon, they did an experiment. And as they were coming back to Earth, they took and they fired the landing module back into the moon. Did you know that? Did anybody know that? And a strange thing happened because the moon reverberated for 60 minutes. 59 point something minutes, the moon reverberated. They couldn't believe it. It was reverberating like a bell. So they took, and the next time they went up there and went around, they had a bigger module. They sent it and they crashed it into the moon, and it reverberated for hours. 6 hours the moon reverberated like a bell. God understands things and puts them in Scripture, and we have no idea. And the Lord Himself shall come with a shout, with a voice of the archangel, with a trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first.
Glory!
And we which are alive and remain.
Yes!
Well, I'm sorry, you all, but I can see some of us remaining the way things are going. The way things are moving, the way things are happening, I can see some of us remaining, and you see God has a clear call. It's going to come as quick and as loud and as clear as a trumpet blast. It's going to come. Okay, and moving on to chapter 11, verse 4. I will allow you to read it. I won't read it. Chapter 11, verse 4. Yeah.
Yes.
Fact is, I'm going to allow you to read it to me.
Okay.
Ramila, chapter 11, verse 4.
Now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat?"
Okay. There's a lesson here. There's a lesson here. There's a lesson here. When you whine, God pays attention. When you pray in faith, God pays attention. But there's a lesson here. When you whine, God pays attention. The people said, "We are hungry." How is God going to feed us? 500,000 men came out of Egypt. 600,000 men came out. They had wives. They had children. They had hungry little ones. They had no formula. They came out of Egypt and they said, "Who shall feed us? We're hungry." And God said, "I guess I will. I'm going to give you a lesson in learning in the desert of the University of Hard Knocks. I'm going to give you a lesson of learning because what I am going to teach you is that I can provide for you even in the desert." And so what was over the children of Israel at night?
Fire, a cloud of fire.
A fire. What was over them during the day? A cloud. When you're in the desert and the sun's hot, you want a cloud to cover you. When you are in the desert and lost at night, you want a fire so you can see and so you're warm. God said, "I will provide." But something from this fire started shedding around the camp, and something started falling with the dew in the morning. And all the people could say is, "Manna, manna, manna." What is it? What is it? What is it? All they could say is, "What is it?" They had no idea what it is. I'll tell you what it is. It's kind of neat because it tastes like Danish muffins. It tastes like a Danish. It's got kind of a butter flavor with nuts. I mean, can you imagine eating 2 pounds of Danish every day and losing weight? Michael, this is our diet. This is what we've been looking for. You eat 2 pounds of this stuff and you lose weight to a perfect body fat. God says, "I will provide for you," but I'm going to give you some lessons too. I'm going to give you some miracles of the manna. What are the miracles of the manna? I'm going to teach you faith. I'm going to teach you to obey. I'm going to teach you to follow me. I'm going to teach you to listen to me. See, most of us grew up without a lot of real faith in God. I do have faith in my doctors, up until Dr. Fauci came along. I do have faith in my lawyers. I do have faith in the policemen. I do have faith in my society. I do have faith in my politicians. I do what they say. Most of us have faith, but it's a divided faith between what's going on in our culture and God. So God said to the children of Israel, "I'm going to teach you about faith, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the miracle of the manna, and you're going to have multiple miracles every week. For 6 days, I'm going to cause this stuff to fall, and you gather 2 quarts of it for everybody in the family. And if you don't gather 2 quarts of it in the morning while the dew is there, it's going to disappear. You can't wait till, no late risers. You can't start 11 o'clock. Can't go out at 2 in the afternoon after sleeping it off all morning. You got to go out and you got to get it. In the morning, early. You get 2 quarts for every person. And I guarantee you'll be strong. I guarantee you'll be healthy. I guarantee you'll be well fed. I guarantee you'll be strong. So God gives them this manna, what is it? 6 mornings in a row. And he says, but you've got to do it by faith that I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I'm going to do it again tomorrow. Because if you gather twice as much as you need, it's going to get rotten like you can't believe. It's going to be creepy crawly. It's going to be green and slimy. it's going to be really terrible stuff. If you don't believe that you can only get it for one day. Except on the seventh day, you're not allowed to go out and work. So on the sixth day, you've got to get 2 quarts for Friday and 2 quarts for Saturday, and it won't get slimy. And it won't get dirty, and it won't get creepy, and it won't get crawly. Do you realize how many miracles they had? The miracles of the timing of every single day. Each day was precise on exactly what God was doing with the miracles of the manna. You see, when you're in God's college, He starts training you to have faith every day. Lord, is it possible that I could have faith in the interest rate? Lord, is it possible I can have faith in the economy? Lord, is it possible that I can have faith in the FBI? Lord, no. You must learn daily faith in me. You see, the Numbers University is God's college of hard knocks in the desert. And the manna was a part of it. Okay, and then chapter 11, verse 11. Chapter 11, verse 11. Somebody want to read that to me? Susan, 11:11.
So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you afflicted your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight, that you have laid the burden of all these people on me?" Okay. This is the pastor's daily prayer. Moses said, God, what in the world is going on that you stuck me with all these people? I mean, do you realize how they're whining and how they're complaining and how nobody has any faith and they're hanging on me and they're clutching at me? Do you realize? And God said, yes. He said, I made them. I made you. I understand. So God says, gather the 70 elders that you had. And this is perfect for elders because there actually are 72 of them. There are 12 tribes and there are 6 from each tribe. And that comes out 72, right? Okay. So 2 of them can't make it. So there's only 70. 70 come. And God says, I'm going to take my spirit off of you and I'm going to put it on them. I'm going to take the spirit that I gave to create the nation of Israel, to lead the nation of Israel. I'm going to pull that spirit from you and I'm going to place it on them. Now, the 2 guys that weren't there, the 2 guys that were somewhere else, and this is the mercy of God. The spirit hit them over there.
Yeah.
The Spirit went and followed them over there. You see, when Moses could not handle it, when Moses couldn't take it, God said, I am going to use my Spirit to create a helper right for you. And so God called these people to serve. And the 70 elders were there. And God blessed. That's what he learned in Numbers University, that God always has more help, that God always has more opportunities, that God has more people. And one of the things we have to learn in the vicissitudes and the changes of life is that God always has more help. God always has someone else. God always has somewhere else of what he's doing. Okay. And looking at chapter 11, verse 18. If somebody will read chapter 11, verse 18.
And say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and ye shall eat flesh, for ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat.
Okay. The word wept here in the Hebrew actually should be spelled whined. I just described the beauty of the manna. What is it? I just described it. It tastes like a Danish. It tastes like a Danish, and you lose weight the more you eat. You eat manna. So the people say, oh man, I remember when we were in Egypt, well, do you remember in Egypt when you had shackles? Do you remember in Egypt when you were under the whip? Do you remember? No, I don't remember that. I just remember that in the market we had melons and we had onions and we had leeks and we had cantaloupes and we had all this good stuff and we had fish from the Nile River. We had all that stuff and they start whining and now all we got is this manna. So God says, okay, I got the message. You are not happy with manna. Therefore, it says the Lord caused an east wind to blow. And this happens periodically. It comes all the way across the Sinai Desert, all the way across the Red Sea. It comes all the way that it just starts blowing all the way. And so as these people are there, plop, plop, plop. Quail start, and these quail are just played out. They've been flying, looking at the water. There's land, and boom, they land. And the camp is inundated. Now I want you to get the picture. The camp is inundated with 2.5 feet of quail. The place is covered. It's like a quail carpet. And God says, now for the next 30 days, you can eat the quail because the manna's gone. And so, for 30 days, they ate the quail. Now, I want to tell you something. When you come to our house for Thanksgiving, we have the most marvelous turkey dinner. And then the day after that, we have the dressing and the rest of the dark meat. And then the day after that, we have shepherd's pie. And then the day after that, we have it sliced thin. And then the day after that, we have sandwiches with a lot of mayonnaise. And then the day after, do you all go through this together? Do you understand where I'm getting at? 30 days they ate the turkey that was left over from their Thanksgiving. God simply wants us to understand the whole purpose of the university that he lays out in the desert. See, and the reason God sends us into deserts is because it's easier to teach us. The reason he sends us into wildernesses, how can I believe that in the midst of everything that's going on that you're really going to take care of me? How can I really comprehend that you, God, are going to do something with me? How can I believe that I can trust you? Well, because Numbers University is God's college of hard knocks in the desert. And that's what he puts us there so that we can learn to trust him. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your heart and your mind in Yeshua HaMashiach, in Jesus' name.